I thought I'd do a little top tips video on the Nuvo Watercolour Pencils, which have just recently launched. I've only just got my hands on them, but I thought I'd show you a few tips, and I'm also going to be colouring in these stamped images that I've heat embossed in white, and this is from the Get Well Soon stamp set Heartfelt Moments collection from Apple Blossom, exclusive to CRaFTi. And I'm just going to show you how I like to use watercolour pencils. So I'm going to be using just the Brilliantly Vibrant set from Nuvo and Tonic, but they also have a set called Hair and Skin Tones too, which is great if you like colouring in people, or if you just want more neutral tones, maybe for buildings and scenery and that kind of thing, or even some of the yellows would be good for the centres of flowers too. Yeah, so, whoops. And the way I like to use watercolour pencils is with the Nuvo AquaFlow Waterbrushes. So they come in a set of 2, and you get a fine nib and a medium nib, like this. I'm going to use a fine nib today, just because it's quite fine detail. And you can see mine are well used. They do come with clear nylon bristles, but obviously mine are a bit dirty. Okay, so I'm going to add in a bit of sparkle pen as well as I'm colouring, because it's gives a nice effect. This is one that I've already coloured. I thought I'd have one done. You can see the bit of sparkle pen in there too. But this is just normal plain white card. My favourite is the CRaFTi UK 300 GSM smooth white card. And I've used Nuvo Glacier white embossing powder and the Nuvo Clearmark ink pad to heat emboss my images. So I'll zoom you in, and so for this little flower image I used a bit of True Blue and Scuba Blue for the flower, and then I used mostly lemongrass with a tiny bit of Imperial Jade for the leaves. So I'm going to start with the lightest Scuba Blue. So my top tips for using watercolour pencils is to press really lightly, and you just want to lay down some colour just sort of in a scribbly motion, because if you do it in a more random fashion like this, you're less likely to see any harsh lines once you've blended them out. But if you tend to scribble like proper lines, it's more possible that you might see the lines, although these Nuvo watercolour pencils are really great for blending out. I haven't had any problems with them. And I also did a video on my main channel, CRaFTi Potential. I think I called it Cutesy Blooms Card Trio or something like that. And I even used these pencils to create my background. So you just hold them on the side and do a really loose line, then just use a nice wide wet paintbrush to blend them out. But anyway, so I'm just laying down some of the lighter colour in most of the flower. Then I'm taking the True Blue, which is slightly dark. I'm going to do the smaller flower in that. And again, as you get onto the darker colours, you want to definitely press lighter, just to make sure you're not going to get any harsh lines left over. And then I'm just going to add the dark into the darkest areas of the flower, so sort of right near the base of the petals and where the petals overlap. Okay, and then I'm going to go back with that lighter colour for that little bit, add a bit of light in there too. Then for the leaves, I'm going to press lightly and go all over with the lemongrass, which is the lighter green. And then I'll come back in with the darker colour in a second. So when you're pressing lightly, you're kind of almost gliding over the paper, and so because you're using such light pressure, it doesn't matter that you're colouring over the top of the heat embossing, because you're not going to flick it off because you're not putting much pressure on the pencil. And then I'm coming in with a little bit of Imperial Jade, just to add a little bit of depth to the leaves and give a bit of shadow around the flower. Okay, so now we've laid down our colour, we're going to turn it into this by using our water pen or water brush. So I've got a piece of kitchen roll as well, just to wipe off any excess water, because you don't need much water, which is why I don't mind working on just normal card rather than watercolour card, because you really don't need much water when working with them. So you're just going to agitate the colour, sort of do a circular motion just to get the pigment wet and bring it out. Really, really easy to do. And the great thing is, because you're just using a water brush to do this with, you could easily do it in front of the telly as well. So there we've got the flower done. Clean off the brush, go over the leaves. You can see how the slightly darker colour just blends in nicely, gives a little bit of shade to your image. So you could simply leave it like that, or if I find a scrap of card, actually I'll just get a piece of this. So if you want to darken the colour, you could wait for this to dry and go back in with a second layer of your coloured pencil, or your watercolour pencil, or you can just scribble on some scrap and use it as a palette to pick up some extra colour and blend that in just to deepen the tones, because I think it's always better to be lighter to begin with and then come back in with a darker colour to give extra shadows. Because if you press too hard or lay down too much dark colour, it's going to overpower your image if you do that to begin with. But if you do it this way, you can easily add that bit of shading without risking it overpowering the rest of your image. Also, never ever take your water brush to the end of your pencil. I've seen people do it in the past, but I thought it was like a cardinal sin of watercolouring, because if you get that lead wet, the water can travel all the way up the pencil, and especially if you get the wood wet, then it can travel and you might get a mouldy, rotting pencil then as well. So I would never put any water anywhere near my watercolour pencils. I would always scribble onto a bit of scrap card. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is, okay, so this is the one we've just done, and this is the one I did before. You don't see much difference there, but if I tilt it, you can see a little bit of sparkle. I think that just adds to it. So how I did that, I've used two of the new colours of the Nuvo glitter markers. I've used Athenian Blue and Morning Moss, and you simply just scribble a bit out onto your glass cutting mat and then pick it up with your water brush. Just dab in a little bit of sparkle. I just think it adds a really nice touch to your image, especially if you're going to keep this as a one layer card. Just adding in that little extra touch of some sparkle can really make the difference. And again, if you're using a slightly darker shade of a glitter marker, you can instantly get that extra shadowing in there too, which is good. You can add a little bit extra under here because that leaves on top. And we can add a bit more down the centre of the leaf too. Okay, so that's my top tips for working with the Nuvo watercolour pencils and using the Nuvo AquaFlow water brush with them, and also adding in a little bit of extra accent using the Nuvo glitter markers too. So I hope you enjoyed this little top tips video. Thanks for watching, bye.